Hello and welcome to this video on pie chart problems. We're going to be taking a look at a range of different problems around the interpretation of pie charts that are taken mainly from AQA past papers. We have got some from other sources as well though. So your first question then, Noreen's carried out a survey of some students and the pie chart shows some information about her favourite holiday. 5 people said walking, so we want to know how many people did the survey and then how many students said cycling. Okay, so first part of the question then here, well 5 people said walking is their favourite holiday, so we want to know how many people took part in the survey. Well, if we take a look at the angle for walking, so that's always a good place to start if you know the angles. Well, we know this is 30 degrees. Now the whole pie chart should add up to 360 degrees because it's a circle. So if we do 360 divided by 30, that means this is a 12th. So there's 1/12 of the people went walking, and that's 5 people. So all we then need to do is 5 times 12, 12 times 5, and that will tell us that the whole pie is worth 60 people. Okay, the second part, then we wanted to know how many people said cycling. So there's a few ways you can do this. One way is like this. Well, the angle for cycling was 60 degrees out of 360. We knew from part A that there were 60 people in total. So if you do 60 over 360 times 60, that will give you 10. If you were doing this on a calculator, on a non-calculator paper, you might find it more straightforward to simplify the fraction. So this would simplify down to 1/6 because you've got 160 on the top, 6/6 on the bottom, and then you could just do 60 divided by 6 to get your 10 there. So sometimes simplifying the fraction might help on a non-calculator paper. Okay, next question then, we've got a pie chart representing the number of rooms in houses in one part of Manchester. We want to know what fraction of these houses have 7 rooms. We want this in its simplest form. And then I'm going to ask you to turn this into a percentage as well. Okay, let's have a look at the solutions to this one then. Well, we're looking at this 18-degree angle here. Well, that's 18 out of 360. So if you were not asked to simplify it, you could just write that. But this would simplify down to 1/20. So 18 does go into both of those numbers, so you can get straight there by dividing by 18. You can use other numbers if you want to as well, so you could half it and you could get 9/180. And then you might realise that 9 goes into a 180 20 times, so then you could work down to your 1/20th that way. Then for your percentage, here's one way of doing this. So we can do 1/20 times 100. That would give us 5%. A nice little way of doing percentages like this. Well, 20 goes into 100 5 times. So you can do 5 times 20. Sorry, 1 times 5, sorry, to get your 5 on the top of that fraction. So you can write a fraction over 100 to get the percentage as well. Okay, next one then. We've got the same pie chart again. So we've got the number of houses with 4 rooms is 940. We want to know how many houses the whole pie represents. So a bit trickier this time. Okay, let's take a look at this one then. So if you take away the angles that you currently know from 360, that tells you that this angle here is 120. So that's always a good starting point on the pie chart problems. Always try and work out any missing angles. Now we know the missing angle. If we know that that 120 degrees is worth 940 houses, we can divide that by 120. Now this will tell us what 1 degree is on the pie chart. Okay, so it's always really good to try and work out what 1 degree is. If you've got some data and you know the angle for that data, the data divided by the angle will tell you 1 degree. Now once we know what 1 degree is, we can times it by 360 and that will get us to 2,820 houses. Okay, next question then. So this time we've got a pie chart showing information about the proportion of animals in a zoo. The angle for the mammals, so this one here is 175 degrees more than this one for the reptiles. And then we're being told that there are 4,680 animals in total, and we're being asked to work out the number of mammals in a zoo. This is a 4-mark question from a previous AQA paper, just to give you a bit of an idea as to how much you have to do. So have a go, pause your video, and then I'll go through the answer. Okay, let's take a look at the solution to this then. So first thing I've done here is I've taken away that 125. Now that tells you you've got 235 left. So this entire angle for the reptiles and the mammals, so the reptiles and the mammals added together is making 235. But we know that the larger angle, the mammals, so this one, is 175 degrees more. So if you add that on to 235, you get 410. And if you half it, that will tell you the larger of the two angles, which is the mammals, and that's the one we want to know to answer this question. Okay, so now we know that this angle is 205 degrees. That will be useful later on. We don't actually really need to know the reptiles one, but if you wanted to figure it out, you could take that away from 235. So that's 30, and we can see that the difference between those two numbers is 175, so that's an indication that we've done that correctly. Now we've got to deal with this data. So we're told that there are 4,680 animals in total. So we could divide that by 360. This bit will tell us what 1 degree is, and then we can multiply by that 205, and that will tell us how many mammals that 205 degrees is worth. Another way of doing this, you can use fractions to do this like this. That's 205 out of 360, and because we know the total, we can multiply that by 4,680, and that will get us to the same answer of 2,665 mammals. So final example then, we've got some information about an election result here. We've got the angle for Mrs. Wood would be 24 degrees more, so that word more is really important here. So we know that Mrs. Wood's angle is bigger here. We know that there are 5,220 votes in total. We're being asked to work out Mrs. Patel. We want to know the number of votes that Mrs. Patel has received. Okay, let's have a little look at this then. So first of all, if we take that 64 away, we know that Mrs. Patel and Mrs. Wood, their angle for that adds up to 296 degrees. So we want to know the smaller of the two angles. So if we take 24 away from 296 degrees, that gives us 272. If we then half that, that will tell us that Mrs. Patel's angle is 136 degrees. So we've taken away there and then we've halved, so that will tell us the smaller of the two angles. If you did want to do Mrs. Wood, you don't even need to. You would just add 24 on and then half it, and that will tell you the angle for Mrs. Wood. But we don't need to do that for this question. Then we've got to deal with this data. So we know that there are 5,220 votes. So if we divide that by 360 times by 136, because we know that that angle is 136 degrees, that will give us 1,972 votes. The other way of doing this, we can write that 136 over 360, and then we can multiply it by 5,220, and that would also get us to that 1,972 votes.